Stop for a thought. Capture the thought passing through your mind right now. Perhaps a worry, perhaps a dream, perhaps a memory from the past. This thought may seem like just a thought, insignificant, temporary, powerless. But what if I told you that this very thought right now is shaping your future? Every action begins as a thought. Every belief starts as a whisper in your mind. Yet most people never question where their thoughts come from, or how much power they truly hold. There is a hidden law, a quiet force shaping your life moment by moment. This is the law of the mind. What you focus on expands, what you dwell upon becomes your world. But here's the truth. This law is silent. It is invisible. Most people live their entire lives unaware of its existence, and that's exactly why their lives seem out of control. They're like leaves blown in the wind, not knowing where they're going, not understanding what drives them. But what if you could learn this law? What if you could understand how the mind works, how your thoughts turn into reality? How would your life change? Because here's the truth, your thoughts create you. You are the sum of your thoughts. What you thought yesterday created who you are today. What you think today will create who you become tomorrow. This is not a simple metaphor. This is a universal truth discovered by science, philosophy, and the great thinkers throughout human history. From ancient Greek philosophers to Eastern sages, from modern neuroscientists to quantum physicists, they all point to the same reality. The mind is the power that creates reality. But most of us don't know how to use this power. Instead, our minds use us. Our thoughts flow uncontrollably. We think the same worries over and over. We feed the same fears. We carry the same limiting beliefs. And then we wonder, why isn't my life changing? The answer is simple yet profound. Because your thoughts haven't changed. Einstein had a famous quote, "We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them." This quote is the essence of the law of the mind. Change doesn't start on the outside, it starts on the inside. It starts in your mind. Now perhaps you're skeptical. Perhaps you're thinking, how can thoughts become things? That's absurd, and I understand. Because this idea contradicts everything we've been taught. We were taught that the world is solid, unchangeable, objective. Thoughts are just voices in our heads, powerless, insignificant. But the truth is, everything started with a thought. The room you're in right now was first designed in someone's mind. The device you're holding was first a thought. The clothes you wear, the language you speak, the identity you possess, all were born from thoughts. And it's not just the outer world. Your inner world, too. Your emotions, your beliefs, your personality, your habits, all are products of your thoughts. Your happiness is a thought. Your unhappiness is a thought. Your courage is a thought. Your fears are thoughts. Here is the hidden law of the mind. Your thoughts create your emotions. Your emotions drive your behaviors. Your behaviors form your habits. Your habits determine your destiny. This is a chain, and the first link in this chain is always a thought. So how do you use this law? How do you become a conscious creator, not a victim living by chance? That's what this journey is for. This audiobook doesn't just offer you a theory. It offers you practical, profound, life-changing understanding. How the mind works, how thoughts are formed, and most importantly, how to control them. Because knowledge is power, but application is freedom. Are you ready? Then let's discover this hidden law together. Let's dive into the depths of the mind and reveal your true power. Because remember, whatever your thoughts are today, that is who you will be tomorrow. Chapter 1. The architecture of mind thoughts. As architects, your thoughts are not harmless. They are the architects of your emotions, your habits, your destiny. A single repeated idea can become a belief. A belief can turn into behavior, and behavior defines who you become. When you constantly think of fear, you attract hesitation. When you nurture peace, you move with clarity. The mind does not argue, it obeys. Whatever you feed it, it grows. But let's pause here. Let's truly understand what this means, because most people hear these words and nod in agreement, yet continue living as though their thoughts don't matter. They treat their mental space like a public square, open to every passerby, every random notion, every borrowed opinion. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a construction site. Every day, builders arrive. These builders are your thoughts. Some carry blueprints for magnificent structures, dreams, aspirations, visions of who you could become. Others carry demolition tools, doubts, criticisms, memories of failure. Now here's the critical question. Who decides which builders get to work? Most people never ask this question. They assume thoughts just happen, like weather, like traffic, like something beyond their control. And so they let every thought enter freely. The worried thought that whispers, "You're not good enough," gets the same access as the inspired thought that declares, "You are capable of greatness." But here's what neuroscience has discovered. Your brain doesn't distinguish between a thought you consciously choose and a thought that randomly appears. To your neural pathways, a thought is a thought. And every thought you entertain, whether for 5 seconds or 5 hours, leaves an imprint. Scientists call this neuroplasticity. It's the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated mental patterns. Think of it like this. Every time you think a thought, you're walking a path through a forest. The first time you have to push through bushes, step over logs, create a trail, but walk that same path every day and soon it becomes a clear road. Eventually, it becomes a highway. This is how thoughts become automatic. This is how beliefs are formed. You didn't decide to believe most of what you believe. You simply thought certain thoughts so many times that they became neural highways. And now, your mind travels those highways automatically, without question, without conscious choice. Let me give you an example. Think about someone who constantly thinks, "I'm bad with money." Maybe they heard it from a parent. Maybe they experienced a financial setback and repeated this thought to themselves. At first it was just a thought, a single pathway through the forest. But they kept thinking it. "I'm bad with money. I'm bad with money. I'm bad with money." What happens? The thought becomes a belief. And here's where it gets fascinating. Once it becomes a belief, the brain starts looking for evidence to support it. This is called confirmation bias. The mind says, "You believe you're bad with money? Let me show you how right you are." So they make a poor financial decision, and instead of seeing it as a single mistake, something anyone could make, they see it as proof. "See? I told you I'm bad with money." The belief strengthens. The neural pathway widens. The highway becomes an 8-lane freeway. Now every financial decision is filtered through this belief. Opportunities are missed because I'm bad with money. Investments are avoided because I'm bad with money. And the original thought, which was never true, just repeated, has now become a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the architecture of the mind. This is how thoughts build your reality, brick by brick, day by day. But here's the beautiful truth. If thoughts can build limiting beliefs, they can also build empowering ones. If neural pathways can be carved toward fear, they can be carved toward courage. If the mind can be programmed with doubt, it can be reprogrammed with certainty. You are not stuck with the mental architecture you currently have. You are the architect. You always have been. The only difference is that now, you're becoming conscious of your power. Let's go deeper into this architectural metaphor. Imagine 3 types of structures your thoughts can build. The foundation. Your core beliefs. These are the deepest thoughts. Repeated so often they've become invisible. You don't even notice them anymore, they're just the way things are. Beliefs about yourself, about others, about how the world works. Life is hard. People can't be trusted. I'm not creative. These foundational beliefs determine everything built on top of them. If your foundation is weak, built from thoughts of inadequacy, fear, or limitation, everything else becomes unstable. You might try to build success on top of it, but the foundation cracks. You might try to build relationships, but they wobble. The structure can't hold because the foundation wasn't built with strong materials. But a strong foundation, built from thoughts of worthiness, possibility, and resilience, can support anything. The same challenges that would crumble a weak foundation only prove the strength of a solid one. The walls. Your daily mental habits. These are the thoughts you think regularly, but not constantly. Your mental habits. The way you interpret events. The lens through which you see your day. Do you wake up thinking about what could go wrong or what could go right? When something unexpected happens, do you immediately think problem or opportunity? These walls protect you or imprison you. They determine what you let in and what you keep out. Some people have walls built from thoughts of gratitude. They let in appreciation, joy, connection. Others have walls built from thoughts of complaint. They let in frustration, resentment, isolation. Your walls determine your daily experience of life. And the fascinating thing, 2 people can have identical circumstances, but completely different experiences, simply because they've built different walls. The roof. Your aspirations and possibilities. This is what you believe is possible for your life. How high can you reach? What's available to you? What's realistic? Your roof is built entirely from thoughts about your potential. Some people have low ceilings. They've thought small for so long that they can't even imagine reaching higher. That's not for people like me. I could never do that. That's just how life is. Their roof keeps them safe, but it also keeps them limited. Others have removed the roof entirely. They've thought thoughts of infinite possibility so consistently that they no longer see limits, only horizons. Not in a naive way, they still understand reality, but they refuse to cap their potential before they've even tried. Now, here's what makes this architectural analogy so powerful. You can renovate. You can demolish old structures and build new ones. You can strengthen your foundation, rebuild your walls, and raise your roof. But it all starts with becoming aware of your current architecture. Most people are living in mental structures they didn't consciously design. They inherited some rooms from their parents. They added some walls based on painful experiences. They lowered the ceiling after a few failures. And now they wonder why they feel trapped. But you're not trapped in a building someone else designed. You're living in a building your thoughts designed, and thoughts can be changed. Here's a profound realization. Every single thing in your external life started as a thought in someone's mind. The chair you're sitting on, someone thought it. The language you're reading, someone thought it. The technology around you, the systems you participate in, the culture you're part of, all thought into existence. And the same is true for your internal life. Your confidence, or lack of it, was thought into existence. Your habits were thought into existence. Your identity was thought into existence. You are right now living in a reality built by your past thoughts, and you are right now building your future reality with your current thoughts. This is not motivation. This is not positive thinking. This is architectural engineering of the mind. Just as a building requires specific materials, precise measurements, and conscious design, your mental architecture requires conscious thought selection, consistent repetition, and deliberate construction. Let me share something crucial. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your habitual thoughts. Not your occasional thoughts, not your wishful thoughts. Your habitual thoughts, the ones you think so often you don't even notice them anymore. If you habitually think thoughts of scarcity, you'll experience scarcity. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because scarcity-minded thoughts lead to scarcity-producing behaviors. You'll hesitate on opportunities. You'll hoard instead of invest. You'll choose safety over growth, and scarcity becomes your reality. If you habitually think thoughts of abundance, you'll experience abundance. Not magically, but mechanically. Abundance-minded thoughts lead to abundance-producing behaviors. You'll spot opportunities others miss. You'll invest where others hesitate. You'll take calculated risks, and abundance becomes your reality. The mind is not mystical. It's mechanical. It operates by laws as predictable as physics. And the first law is this: what you consistently think, you inevitably become. So the question isn't whether your thoughts are shaping your life. They are. The question is, are you conscious of which thoughts you're allowing to build your reality? Because here's the final truth of this chapter. You cannot stop thinking. Thoughts will come. The construction site of your mind is always active, but you can choose which builders get to stay, which blueprints get approved, which materials get used. This is the hidden law of the mind. This is the power you've always had but perhaps never fully claimed. You are the architect. Your thoughts are your tools. And your life is the structure you're building, one thought at a time. The question now becomes, what will you build? Chapter 2. From thoughts to beliefs, the birth of belief systems. There is a moment in every person's life when a thought stops being just a thought. It crosses an invisible threshold. It becomes something more permanent, more powerful, more defining. It becomes a belief. And once something becomes a belief, it no longer needs evidence. It no longer needs proof. It becomes self-evident, a lens through which all future experiences are filtered, interpreted, and understood. This is how belief systems are born. Not through rational analysis, not through careful consideration, but through repetition, emotion, and acceptance. A thought repeated enough times, felt deeply enough, accepted without question, transforms into a belief. And beliefs, unlike thoughts, feel like truth. But here's what most people never realize. Your beliefs are not truths. They are simply thoughts you've been thinking for a very long time. Let me take you back, way back, to the very beginning of your belief system. You were born without beliefs. As an infant, you had no concept of limitation, no idea of impossibility, no understanding of I can't. You reached for everything. You explored everything. You feared nothing except loud noises and falling. Everything else was pure curiosity, pure possibility. Then the programming began, not maliciously, not intentionally, but inevitably, because every child absorbs beliefs from their environment like a sponge absorbs water. You absorbed beliefs from your parents, your siblings, your teachers, your culture, your experiences. And most of these beliefs were never consciously examined. They were simply accepted. Don't talk to strangers. A thought becomes a belief. The world is dangerous. Money doesn't grow on trees. A thought becomes a belief. Resources are scarce. Stop crying, be strong. A thought becomes a belief. Emotions are weakness. You're so smart. Or why can't you be more like your brother? A thought becomes a belief. My worth is conditional. None of these statements are inherently true. They're interpretations, perspectives, single data points. But to a child's developing mind, they become gospel. They become the foundation upon which an entire belief system is built. And here's the invisible tragedy. You're still operating from many of these childhood beliefs. Right now, today. As an adult with decades of life experience, you're still running programs installed when you were 5, 7, 10 years old. That hesitation you feel before speaking up in a meeting might be a belief formed when a teacher once told you your answer was wrong, and the class laughed. That anxiety about money might be a belief formed watching your parents argue about bills. That fear of rejection might be a belief formed the first time you weren't picked for the team. Single moments, single thoughts. Repeated internally, strengthened by emotion, accepted as truth. And now they run your life like invisible puppet strings. But let's go deeper. Let's understand the precise mechanism by which thoughts transform into beliefs. Because once you understand the mechanism, you can reverse it. Stage 1. The initial thought. Every belief starts as a single thought. Someone says something, you experience something, you interpret something. A thought enters your consciousness. Maybe I'm not good enough. At this stage, it's fragile. It's questionable. It's just one interpretation among many possible interpretations. You could easily dismiss it, challenge it, or replace it with a different thought. The neural pathway is thin, barely formed. Stage 2. Repetition and reinforcement, but you don't dismiss it. Instead, you think it again. I'm really not good enough. And again, I'm definitely not good enough. Each repetition strengthens the neural pathway. Each time you think this thought, it becomes slightly more automatic, slightly more believable. Then something happens, a small failure, a minor setback, a moment of criticism. And your mind says, see, evidence, you're not good enough. The thought gains momentum. The pathway deepens. This is confirmation bias at work. Once your mind starts entertaining a thought repeatedly, it begins actively looking for evidence to support it. Not because it's seeking truth, but because the brain craves consistency. It wants the world to make sense. So if you're thinking, I'm not good enough, your brain will helpfully point out every instance that confirms this, while filtering out contradictory evidence. Stage 3. Emotional anchoring. Here's where it gets powerful. When a repeated thought is paired with strong emotion, it accelerates its transformation into belief. Emotion is like fertilizer for thoughts. It makes them grow faster, root deeper. You fail at something while already thinking I'm not good enough, and you feel shame. That shame creates a powerful emotional anchor. Now the thought isn't just a thought, it's a felt experience. It has emotional weight, and emotionally charged thoughts are remembered more vividly, recalled more easily, and believed more deeply. This is why traumatic experiences create such strong beliefs. It's not just the event. It's the event plus the interpretation plus the intense emotion. A single highly emotional moment can create a belief that lasts decades. But here's what's equally important. Positive emotions work the same way. A moment of success paired with the thought I am capable, and the feeling of pride can also create lasting beliefs. The mechanism is neutral. It works for empowerment and limitation alike. Stage 4. Identity integration. This is the final stage and the most insidious. The thought has been repeated enough, reinforced enough and emotionally charged enough that it stops being something you think and starts being something you are. I'm not good enough becomes I am inadequate. Not I had a thought about inadequacy. Not I'm experiencing a belief about inadequacy. No, I am inadequate. It's absorbed into your identity, and once something becomes part of your identity, defending it becomes automatic. Because if someone challenges your belief, it feels like they're challenging you. Your ego gets involved. Your sense of self is at stake. This is why people hold on to limiting beliefs even when they're clearly causing pain. Because the belief isn't separate from them. It is them. To release the belief feels like losing part of yourself. Think about someone who identifies as not a morning person. They've thought this so many times, reinforced it with so many experiences of hitting snooze, felt frustrated about it so many times, that it's now part of their identity. And now, even if they wanted to become a morning person, their mind rebels. That's not who I am. I'm not a morning person. The belief has become a self-imposed prison, and the person has become both the prisoner and the guard. Now, let's look at how belief systems, not just individual beliefs, but entire networks of interconnected beliefs, shape your entire life. Imagine your belief system as a tree. There's a root belief, a core assumption about yourself, others, or the world. From this root grow branches, related beliefs that stem from the core. And from these branches grow leaves, specific thoughts, reactions, and behaviors. Let's say the root belief is, the world is unsafe. From this root, branches grow. I must be hypervigilant. Trust is dangerous. Vulnerability leads to pain. I need to control everything to stay safe. From these branches, leaves appear. Anxiety in new situations. Difficulty forming close relationships. Overworking to feel secure. Avoiding risks. Suspicion of others' motives. Constant worst-case scenario thinking. All of this, an entire way of being, growing from a single root belief that was probably formed in childhood, possibly from a single series of events, interpreted in a particular way. And here's what's fascinating. Someone else could experience the exact same events and form a completely different root belief. One child experiences their parents' divorce and forms the belief, relationships are unstable. Another child, same divorce, forms the belief, I am resilient and can handle change. Same event. Different interpretation, different thought, different belief, different life. This is crucial to understand. Events don't create beliefs. Interpretations of events create beliefs. And interpretations are choices, even if we make them unconsciously. Now, let's talk about the most powerful and most limiting type of belief. Beliefs about your identity. Who you believe you are determines what you think you can do, what you think you deserve, and what you think is possible for you. If you believe I am unlucky, you'll interpret events through this lens. A good thing happens. It won't last. A bad thing happens. Of course I'm unlucky. If you believe I am creative, you'll see opportunities for creativity everywhere. A problem arises. I can think of a creative solution. If you believe I am not creative, that same problem feels insurmountable. I'm just not creative enough to figure this out. Your identity beliefs act as a thermostat. When your behavior drifts too far from your identity, you unconsciously course correct. This is why people who lose weight often gain it back. Not because they lack willpower, but because they still identify as someone who struggles with weight. Their behavior temporarily changed, but their identity belief didn't, and eventually, behavior snaps back to match identity. This is also why people self-sabotage right before success. They're approaching a level of achievement that contradicts their identity belief. I'm not the kind of person who succeeds at this. So unconsciously, they sabotage. Not because they don't want success, but because success would require them to update their identity, and that feels threatening to the ego. The ego doesn't care if your identity is empowering or limiting. It only cares about consistency. It wants you to remain who you believe you are, even if who you believe you are is making you miserable. But here's the liberating truth. Identity is just a collection of beliefs, and beliefs are just thoughts you've been thinking for a long time, which means identity is changeable, completely, utterly changeable. You are not fixed. You are not permanent. You are not just the way you are. You are the culmination of thoughts you've practiced, and any thought you've practiced, you can unpractice. Any thought you haven't practiced, you can begin practicing. Let me give you a real example. There was a man, let's call him David, who believed for 40 years that he was bad at speaking in public. This belief was formed in middle school when he froze during a presentation and kids laughed. One moment, one interpretation, I'm bad at public speaking. One strong emotion, humiliation. For 40 years, this belief shaped his life. He avoided presentations at work. He declined opportunities that required speaking. He felt anxiety even at small gatherings. The belief had become part of his identity. I'm just not a public speaker. Then one day someone asked him a simple question. How do you know that's true? He said, what do you mean? I've always been bad at it. No, they said. You had one bad experience at age 12, then spent 40 years avoiding it. You haven't been bad at it. You've been avoiding it. There's a difference. This question, how do you know that's true, cracked something open. David realized his belief wasn't based on evidence. It was based on a single event and 4 decades of avoidance. He had never actually tested whether he was bad at public speaking as an adult. He just assumed the belief was true. So he started questioning it. Is this belief serving me? Is it accurate? Is it necessary? And most importantly, is this who I want to continue being? He began practicing a new thought. I am learning to speak confidently in public. Not I'm great at it. That would have felt too far from his current belief and his mind would have rejected it. But I'm learning? That felt possible. That felt true enough to practice. He repeated this thought. He took a public speaking class. He volunteered to give small presentations. Each time he reinforced the new thought. Each time he weakened the old belief. The neural pathway of I'm bad at speaking began to fade from lack of use. The neural pathway of I'm learning to speak confidently began to strengthen from repeated use. Within a year, he was giving presentations at work. Within 2 years, he was leading workshops. The old belief didn't just fade. It was replaced by a new one, consciously chosen, deliberately practiced. This is the power of understanding how beliefs are formed. Once you see them as thoughts you've practiced, not truths you're stuck with, everything changes. So let's bring this full circle. Your current belief system, everything you believe about yourself, others, and the world, was built thought by thought, experience by experience, interpretation by interpretation. Most of it was built unconsciously. Most of it was built when you were too young to question it. Most of it was built by someone else's beliefs being transferred to you. But now you're aware. Now you're conscious. Now you can examine your beliefs and ask, is this true? Is this serving me? Is this who I want to be? And here's the most profound part. You don't have to wait for new evidence to change a belief. You don't have to wait for external circumstances to shift. You can decide right now to start practicing a new thought. And if you practice it consistently enough, emotionally charge it positively enough, and integrate it deeply enough, it will become your new belief. This is not self-deception. This is self-direction. This is conscious evolution. This is taking control of the mechanism that has been running automatically your entire life. Your beliefs are not prison walls. They're not set in stone. They're mental habits, and habits can be changed. The question is, will you change them consciously, or will you let them continue running automatically, built from old thoughts that no longer serve you? The choice, as always, is yours, because you are not your beliefs. You are the one who has been believing them, and you can choose to believe something different. Chapter 3. The emotion-thought loop, the dance between feeling and thinking. There is a secret cycle happening inside you right now, a perpetual dance between two forces that most people believe are separate, but are actually inseparable. These forces are your thoughts and your emotions. And the relationship between them is not linear. It's circular. It's a loop. And this loop is either lifting you higher or pulling you lower, every single moment of every single day. Most people believe that emotions just happen to them. Something occurs in the external world and they feel a certain way. Someone cuts them off in traffic, they feel angry. They receive good news, they feel happy. They face a challenge, they feel anxious. The emotion seems to come from the outside event, but this is an illusion. A convenient story the mind tells itself, because the truth is far more empowering and far more terrifying. Your emotions don't come from events. They come from your thoughts about events. Let me prove this to you with a simple example. Imagine 2 people receive the same phone call. Their boss wants to see them in the office tomorrow morning. Same event, same phone call, same words. Person A thinks, "Oh no, I'm probably getting fired. They found out about that mistake I made. This is terrible. What will I tell my family? How will I pay my bills?" What emotion follows these thoughts? Fear, anxiety, dread, maybe even panic. Person B thinks, "Interesting. Maybe they want to discuss that project I've been working on. Or perhaps there's a new opportunity coming up. I wonder what they need." What emotion follows these thoughts? Curiosity, perhaps mild anticipation, maybe even excitement, save event. Completely different emotions. Why? Because the event itself has no emotional content. The event is neutral. The emotion comes entirely from the interpretation, the thought, about the event. This is the first half of the loop. Thoughts create emotions. Every emotion you've ever felt was preceded by a thought. You might not have noticed the thought. It might have been so fast, so automatic, so habitual that it seemed invisible. But it was there, always, because emotions don't spontaneously generate. They are the body's response to the mind's interpretation. Think of your thoughts as the language of the mind, and your emotions as the language of the body. The mind interprets and the body responds. The mind says danger and the body produces fear chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline. The mind says safety, and the body produces calm chemicals, serotonin, oxytocin. The mind says joy, and the body responds with dopamine. Your body is always listening to your mind, always responding, always translating thoughts into feelings. This is not metaphorical. This is biochemical, measurable, undeniable. But here's where it gets fascinating, and where most people get trapped. The loop doesn't end there, because once an emotion is created, it influences your next thought. This is the second half of the loop. Emotions influence thoughts. Let's go back to person A, the one who felt fear after thinking, "I'm getting fired." Now that fear is in their body, heart racing, palms sweating, mind spinning. And in this fearful state, what kind of thoughts does their mind produce? More fearful thoughts. What if I can't find another job? What if this ruins my career? What if I lose my house? What if my partner leaves me because I failed? Each thought generates more fear. Each surge of fear generates more catastrophic thoughts. The loop accelerates. Thought creates emotion, creates thought, creates emotion, faster and faster, spiraling downward. This is what we call an emotional spiral, and most people have experienced it. Maybe you've had a sleepless night where one worried thought led to an anxious feeling, which led to more worried thoughts, which led to more anxiety, until you were completely overwhelmed by thoughts and feelings that, hours earlier, didn't even exist. Or perhaps you've experienced the opposite, a positive spiral. You thought something hopeful, felt a spark of excitement which made you think more hopeful thoughts which increased the excitement until you felt genuinely inspired and energized. Same mechanism, different direction. The loop is neutral. It amplifies whatever you feed it. Feed it fear and fear grows. Feed it gratitude and gratitude grows. Feed it resentment and resentment grows. Feed it love and love grows. This is why emotional states are so sticky. Why a bad mood can last for hours or even days. Why depression feels like an inescapable void. Why anxiety can take over your entire mind. Because once you're in the loop, it perpetuates itself. Negative thoughts create negative emotions, which create more negative thoughts, which create stronger negative emotions. And here's the trap. When you're inside an emotional state, your thoughts feel true. When you're anxious, anxious thoughts seem accurate. When you're depressed, depressing thoughts seem like reality. When you're angry, angry thoughts seem justified. Your emotional state colors your perception. It's like wearing tinted glasses. Everything you see is filtered through that tint. If you're wearing glasses tinted with fear, the world looks dangerous. If you're wearing glasses tinted with joy, the world looks beautiful. Same world, different lens. This is why you can't trust your thoughts when you're in an intense emotional state. Not because your thoughts are lying, but because they're being generated by your current emotional chemistry, and that chemistry is biased. It's designed to keep you in the state you're already in. Neuroscience calls this state-dependent thinking. Your brain literally has different thinking patterns depending on your emotional state. When you're calm, you can access your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, planning, and perspective. When you're in fight or flight mode, your amygdala takes over, the part responsible for survival, threat detection, and reactive behavior. In a calm state, You might think, this is a challenge, but I've overcome challenges before. I can figure this out. In a fearful state, that same challenge produces, I can't do this. It's too much. I'm going to fail. Same brain, same person, different emotional state, completely different thoughts. So the question becomes, if thoughts create emotions and emotions influence thoughts, and this loop can spiral in either direction, how do you break a negative loop? How do you shift from a downward spiral to an upward one? This is where most people make a critical mistake. They try to change the emotion directly. They try to stop being anxious or stop being sad or just be happy. And it doesn't work, because emotions are effects, not causes. You can't directly control an emotion any more than you can directly control your heart rate or your digestion. These are automatic bodily responses, but you can influence them, indirectly, by changing the cause. And the cause, always, is thought. If you want to change your emotional state, you must change your thought pattern. Not by forcing it, not by denying the emotion, but by consciously choosing a different thought and then another, until the emotional chemistry begins to shift. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you're feeling anxious. Maybe you have a presentation tomorrow and you're thinking, what if I mess up? What if people judge me? What if I look stupid? These thoughts are generating anxiety. Your body is responding to the threat your mind is imagining. Now, you can't just tell yourself, don't be anxious. That doesn't work. The anxiety is already there, chemicals already released. But you can interrupt the thought pattern. You can notice the catastrophic thinking and consciously introduce a different thought. Not a fake positive thought, your mind would reject that, but a more balanced, more realistic thought. I've prepared for this presentation. I know my material. Even if I'm nervous, I can still deliver value. And even if it's not perfect, it's not a catastrophe. It's just a presentation. This thought doesn't instantly eliminate the anxiety, but it reduces it. It interrupts the spiral. And as the anxiety decreases even slightly, your mind has access to more rational thinking, which allows for more balanced thoughts, which reduces anxiety further. The loop begins moving in the other direction. This is the power of thought awareness. Once you understand that you're not trapped in an emotion, you're trapped in a thought pattern that's generating that emotion, you gain agency. You gain the ability to interrupt the loop. But here's what requires practice: catching the thoughts early. Because the longer a negative thought pattern runs, the stronger the emotional state becomes, and the harder it is to interrupt. Catch it early within the first few thoughts, and you can shift relatively easily. Let it run for an hour, and you're dealing with a deeply entrenched emotional state that requires much more effort to shift. This is why mindfulness, moment-to-moment awareness of your thoughts and feelings, is so powerful. It's not about achieving some Zen state of permanent calm. It's about catching the loops early, before they spiral out of control. Think of it like a small leak in a boat. Catch it immediately and you can plug it with your finger. Ignore it for an hour and you're bailing water frantically. Same leak, different outcome based on awareness and timing. Now, let's explore the different types of emotional loops that people commonly get stuck in, because recognizing your pattern is the first step to changing it. The anxiety loop thought. Something bad might happen. Emotion, anxiety, physical response. Tension, rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing. Next thought, I can't handle this. What if it gets worse? Stronger emotion, panic loop continues. This loop is fueled by future-focused, catastrophic thinking. The mind projects into the future, imagines worst-case scenarios, and the body responds as if those scenarios are happening now. The anxiety makes it harder to think clearly, which produces more catastrophic thoughts, which produces more anxiety. The depression loop thought. Nothing matters. Nothing will change. Emotion, hopelessness. Physical response, fatigue, low energy, withdrawal. Next thought. Why even try? What's the point? Stronger emotion, deeper depression. Loop continues. This loop is fueled by past-focused and meaning-depleted thinking. The mind reviews failures, sees no possibility for change, and the body responds by conserving energy, shutting down. The depression makes everything feel meaningless, which reinforces depressing thoughts, which deepens the depression. The anger loop thought. That's unfair. They shouldn't have done that. Emotion, anger, physical response, muscle tension, heat, aggression. Next thought. They always do this. They don't respect me. Stronger emotion, rage loop continues. This loop is fueled by injustice-focused and blame-oriented thinking. The mind identifies a violation of how things should be, and the body prepares for confrontation. The anger narrows focus onto the perceived offense, which generates more angry thoughts, which intensifies the anger. The shame loop thought, I'm not good enough. I'm flawed, emotion. Shame physical response, shrinking, hiding, disconnection. Next thought, everyone sees how inadequate I am. Stronger emotion. Deep shame loop continues. This loop is fueled by identity-level negative thinking. The mind doesn't just identify a mistake, it identifies the self as a mistake. The shame makes you want to hide, which reinforces the belief that there's something to hide, which deepens the shame. Do you recognize yourself in any of these? Most people have a default loop, one they fall into more easily than others. And once you recognize your pattern, you can begin to intervene more effectively. But here's something even more powerful. You can also create positive loops intentionally. Just as negative loops spiral downward, positive loops spiral upward. And the mechanism is identical. It just requires conscious direction. The gratitude loop thought, I appreciate what I have. Emotion, gratitude physical response, warmth, openness, relaxation. Next thought, there's actually a lot to be grateful for. Stronger emotion. Deep appreciation loop continues. The curiosity loop thought, I wonder how this works. Emotion, interest physical response, alertness, engagement. Next thought, what else can I discover? Stronger emotion, fascination loop continues. The confidence loop, thought, I can handle this. Emotion, confidence, physical response, upright posture, steady breathing. Next thought, I've done difficult things before. Stronger emotion, self-assurance loop continues. These positive loops don't happen by accident. They happen by choice, by consciously selecting thoughts that generate the emotions you want to feel, and then allowing those emotions to reinforce empowering thoughts. This is not toxic positivity. This is not denying reality. This is understanding that your interpretation of reality is flexible, and that different interpretations produce wildly different emotional experiences. And since you're going to interpret anyway, your mind can't not interpret, you might as well choose interpretations that serve you. Let me share something profound. Every emotion is information. Fear says, there might be danger, pay attention. Sadness says, something matters to me that I've lost, honor it. Anger says a boundary has been violated, protect yourself. Shame says I'm not living according to my values, realign. Emotions aren't problems to be eliminated, they're signals to be understood. But the loop becomes problematic when the signal repeats endlessly without new information. When you feel fear about the same imagined scenario for the 100th time, the emotion is no longer providing useful information. It's just a stuck loop. So the practice becomes, feel the emotion fully. Understand its message. Then consciously choose a thought that either addresses the message or redirects your focus. Don't suppress, don't deny, but also don't let the loop run unchecked. This is emotional intelligence. Not the absence of difficult emotions, but the ability to recognize them, understand them, and consciously choose your response instead of automatically reacting. And here's the beautiful part. The more you practice interrupting negative loops and initiating positive ones, the more natural it becomes. Your brain creates neural pathways for emotional regulation. The interrupting becomes faster. The redirecting becomes easier. The positive loops become more accessible. You're not trying to achieve a permanent positive state that's not realistic or even desirable. You're developing the skill to shift states consciously, to recognize when you're in a loop that's not serving you and to gently guide yourself toward one that does. This is mastery, not control over external circumstances, but influence over internal responses. Because you can't control what happens to you, but you can absolutely influence what you think about what happens to you, and what you think determines what you feel. And what you feel influences what you think next. The loop is always running. The question is, are you running it or is it running you? Understanding this, truly understanding this, changes everything. Because it means you're never trapped. You're never helpless. You're never at the mercy of your emotions. You might be in a difficult emotional state, yes. But you're not stuck there. Not if you're willing to notice your thoughts, question them, and consciously choose different ones. This takes practice. It takes patience. It takes self-compassion when you slip back into old loops. But it's possible. Completely, utterly possible. Because the mechanism is simple, even if the execution requires effort. Thoughts create emotions. Emotions influence thoughts. You can't control the first thought that appears, but you can choose whether to continue thinking it. And that choice, that single choice repeated moment by moment, determines whether your loops spiral up or spiral down. The power has always been yours. Now you're learning how to use it. Chapter 4. Reprogramming the Mind. The Art and Science of Mental Transformation. You are running software. Right now, as you read these words, your mind is executing programs. Patterns of thinking that were installed years ago, perhaps decades ago, by experiences you may not even consciously remember. These programs run automatically, beneath your awareness, shaping your perceptions, driving your behaviors, determining your responses to life. Some of these programs serve you beautifully. They help you navigate the world efficiently, respond to situations appropriately, and function effectively in your daily life. But some of these programs, perhaps many of them, are outdated, corrupted, or were never designed with your best interests in mind. They're running based on old data, childhood fears, inherited beliefs, or traumatic experiences that are no longer relevant to your current reality. And here's the extraordinary truth that most people never realize. You can reprogram your mind. Completely, intentionally, systematically. Not through magic, not through wishful thinking, but through understanding the precise mechanisms by which the mind is programmed and applying specific techniques to rewrite the code. This is not metaphor. The brain is quite literally programmable. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, is one of the most significant discoveries in neuroscience. It means that the brain you have today is not the brain you're stuck with forever. Every thought you think, every action you take, every experience you have is literally reshaping your neural architecture. The old belief was that the brain was fixed after childhood, that you were basically stuck with whatever mental patterns were established early in life. Neuroscience has completely demolished this belief. Your brain is plastic, shapeable, moldable, reprogrammable throughout your entire life. The question is not whether your brain can change. The question is, are you changing it consciously or unconsciously? Because make no mistake, your brain is changing right now. This very moment, every moment. It's always in the process of becoming. The question is, becoming what? Let's start with understanding what we mean by a mental program. Think of it as a sequence of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that have been linked together through repetition until they run automatically. You encounter a trigger, and the program executes. No conscious choice required. No deliberation. Just automatic response. For example, someone criticizes you. That's the trigger. Immediately, without conscious thought, you might feel defensive. Your jaw tightens. You prepare a counter-argument or a justification. Perhaps you feel a flash of anger or a wave of shame. You didn't decide to feel these things or do these things, they just happened. That's a program running, or you face a challenge. That's the trigger. Immediately, you might feel overwhelmed. Your thoughts spiral. This is too hard. I can't do this. I always mess these things up. Your body slumps. Your energy drops. Again, you didn't consciously choose this response. It's automatic. It's a program. These programs were installed through a process that psychologists call conditioning. Something happened, you responded in a particular way, and that response either got reinforced or it got repeated until it became automatic. Now that response is your default. It's your programming. But here's what's crucial to understand. If programming can be installed unconsciously through repetition and conditioning, it can be rewritten consciously through the same mechanisms, repetition and conditioning, but applied intentionally. This is the foundation of reprogramming. You must consciously repeat new patterns until they become automatic. You must condition new responses until they replace old ones. You must practice new ways of thinking until they become your default. Simple in concept, challenging in execution, but absolutely unquestionably possible. Let's break down the reprogramming process into clear, actionable stages. This isn't theory. This is practical methodology that has been proven effective through both ancient wisdom traditions and modern psychological research. Stage 1. Awareness and identification. You cannot change a program you're not aware of. The first stage is to develop conscious awareness of your automatic patterns. This means catching yourself in the act, noticing when a program is running. This requires what meditation traditions call the witness, the part of you that can observe your thoughts and emotions without being completely identified with them. It's the difference between I am angry and I am experiencing anger. The first is identification. The second is awareness. Start by identifying your most common triggers and your automatic responses. What situations consistently produce the same emotional reactions in you? What thoughts automatically appear in certain contexts? What behaviors do you find yourself doing without conscious choice? Write them down. Literally. Because what's vague in your mind becomes clear on paper. You might think you know your patterns, but until you articulate them explicitly, they remain fuzzy and difficult to work with. For instance, when someone criticizes my work, I immediately feel defensive and either shut down or attack back. That's a program identified. Or, when I face a financial decision, I feel anxious and procrastinate. That's a program identified. The more specific you can be, the more precisely you can target your reprogramming efforts. Vague awareness produces vague change. Specific awareness produces specific change. But here's the challenging part. Your ego will resist this process. Because identifying programs means acknowledging that much of what you think and feel and do isn't freely chosen. It's conditioned. And the ego prefers to believe it's in control, that everything you do is a conscious choice. Admitting otherwise feels threatening. Push through this resistance. Because this awareness isn't about self-judgment. It's about self-understanding. You're not bad for having unconscious programs. Every human has them. The only difference between someone who's stuck and someone who's growing is awareness. The stuck person runs programs unconsciously. The growing person recognizes them and works to change them. Stage 2. Interruption and disruption. Once you've identified a program, the next stage is to interrupt it when it starts to run. This is critical, because a program only maintains its strength through repeated execution. Every time it runs unchallenged, it gets stronger. Every time you interrupt it, it gets weaker. Think of a program like a path through the forest. Every time you walk that path, it becomes more defined, easier to follow. But if you stop walking it, grass begins to grow. Bushes start to fill in. Eventually, if you never walk it, the path disappears entirely. Neural pathways work exactly the same way. Use them, they strengthen. Don't use them, they fade. Interruption means catching the program early, ideally right at the trigger before it fully executes. The moment you notice the trigger, you pause. You don't let the automatic response complete. You insert conscious choice into what was previously an automatic sequence. This is incredibly difficult at first, because the program wants to run. It's been running for years, maybe decades. It has momentum. It feels urgent. Your body is already producing the chemicals associated with the emotional response. Your mind is already generating the associated thoughts. But you pause anyway. Even for just 3 seconds, 3 conscious breaths. This pause is revolutionary, because in that pause you're breaking the automatic link between trigger and response. You're creating a gap, and in that gap, choice becomes possible. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say your program is, criticism triggers defensiveness. Someone criticizes you, and before you even consciously think about it, you're defending yourself, explaining, justifying, or counterattacking. To reprogram this, you need to catch it right at the moment of criticism. Someone says something critical. You feel the defensiveness rising. This is the crucial moment. Instead of letting it run automatically, you pause. You take a breath. You create a gap between the trigger and your response. In that gap, you might notice, I'm feeling defensive. This is my program running. I don't have to respond automatically. Just that recognition, just that moment of awareness is already weakening the program. But here's what's important. The goal isn't to suppress the emotion or pretend you don't feel it. The goal is to observe it without immediately acting on it. You can feel defensive and still choose not to respond defensively. The feeling and the action are separate, even though your program has linked them. This interruption stage requires practice. Lots of it. You'll miss it many times. You'll catch yourself only after the program has fully run. That's okay. That's part of the process. The more you practice, the earlier you'll catch it. Eventually, you'll catch it right at the trigger, and eventually the program will weaken enough that it stops running automatically. Stage 3. Replacement and reconditioning. Interrupting old programs is necessary but not sufficient. Because nature abhors a vacuum. If you simply try to stop an old pattern without replacing it with something new, the old pattern will eventually return. This is why willpower alone doesn't work for lasting change. You can suppress a program temporarily through sheer force of will, but you can't eliminate it that way. You have to replace it. This is where conscious reconditioning comes in. You need to install a new program, a new sequence of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors to replace the old one. And you install it the same way the old one was installed, through repetition and emotional reinforcement. Let's continue with our defensiveness example. You've interrupted the automatic defensive response. Now what? Now you consciously choose a different response. Not once, but repeatedly. Every time the trigger occurs, you practice the new response. Perhaps the new response is, when criticized, I listen calmly, consider if there's any validity to the feedback, and respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. That's your new program. Now you have to practice it. The first few times will feel forced, unnatural, because the new neural pathway is just beginning to form. It's like trying to walk through the forest where there's no path yet. It requires effort. It requires attention, but you do it anyway. And here's the key. You need to engage emotion in this process, because programs with emotional charge are installed faster and deeper than purely cognitive ones. This is why traumatic experiences create such powerful programs. They have intense emotional content. So when you practice your new response, don't just do it mechanically. Feel it. After you successfully respond to criticism with calmness instead of defensiveness, acknowledge yourself. Feel pleased. Feel proud. Feel the satisfaction of having acted according to your values rather than your conditioning. This positive emotion reinforces the new program. This might sound trivial, but it's neurologically crucial. Your brain releases dopamine when you feel satisfied or successful. Dopamine strengthens neural connections. So by feeling good about your new response, you're literally strengthening the neural pathway associated with that response. You're making it more likely that you'll choose it again next time. This is operant conditioning applied consciously. You're training yourself the way you might train a dog, through positive reinforcement. Except you're both the trainer and the trainee. You're consciously using the brain's own learning mechanisms to install the programs you want. How long does this take? It varies. The popular myth is 21 days to form a habit. But research shows it's more complex than that. Some simple habits can form in days. Complex programs can take months. The average is around 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. But here's what matters more than the timeline: consistency. It's not about doing it perfectly every time. It's about doing it more often than not. Each time you choose the new response over the old one, you're strengthening the new pathway and weakening the old one. Over time, with consistent practice, the new response becomes easier, more natural, more automatic. Eventually, it becomes your new default, your new program. Stage 4. Environmental design. Here's something most people miss. Your environment is constantly programming you. The people you spend time with, the media you consume, the physical spaces you inhabit, all of these are either reinforcing your desired programs or undermining them. If you're trying to reprogram yourself to be more confident, but you're constantly surrounded by people who criticize you, your environment is working against your programming efforts. If you're trying to cultivate peace but you're consuming inflammatory news media all day, your environment is sabotaging your progress. Reprogramming isn't just about what you do in moments of conscious practice. It's about designing your entire environment to support the person you're becoming. This is environmental conditioning, and it's incredibly powerful. Think about it. Every input you expose yourself to is either strengthening desirable neural pathways or undesirable ones. Every conversation, every article, every video, every interaction, it's all programming your mind consciously or unconsciously. So become intentional about your inputs. If you want to reprogram yourself to be more grateful, surround yourself with reminders of gratitude. Keep a gratitude journal. Spend time with people who appreciate life. Consume content that highlights beauty and abundance. Your environment will reinforce your practice. If you want to reprogram yourself to be more courageous, expose yourself to stories of courage. Spend time with people who take risks. Put yourself in situations that require courage, starting small and building up. Your environment will condition courage. This doesn't mean creating a bubble or avoiding all challenges. It means being strategic about what you expose yourself to, especially during the vulnerable early stages of reprogramming. Once a new program is well established, you can handle contradictory inputs without being derailed. But when you're first forming a new pattern, protection and support are crucial. Stage 5. Identity integration. This is the deepest level of reprogramming and the most transformative. It's not just changing what you do or how you think in specific situations. It's changing who you believe you are. Remember from Chapter 2, your identity beliefs are the most powerful programs you have. They determine what you think is possible for you, what you think you deserve, and what behaviors feel natural versus forced. If you've successfully reprogrammed specific responses but haven't integrated them into your identity, they'll always feel like efforts rather than expressions. You'll always be trying to be different rather than simply being different. True reprogramming requires updating your self-concept. If you've been practicing confident responses but you still fundamentally identify as an insecure person, there's an identity conflict. Part of you is changing, while another part is clinging to the old self-image. This integration happens through a process called identity shift. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who's trying to be confident, but as someone who is becoming confident. And eventually as someone who is confident. Language matters here. Notice the difference between these statements. I'm trying to be more confident. External effort. Not integrated. I'm becoming a more confident person. Transitional. Moving toward integration. I am a confident person. Integrated identity. The third statement might feel untrue at first. That's okay. You're not lying to yourself. You're offering your mind a new identity to grow into. And if you continue acting consistently with that identity, choosing confident responses, thinking confident thoughts, feeling confident emotions, your brain will eventually accept it as true, because from your brain's perspective, you are what you consistently do. This is not fake it till you make it in a superficial sense. This is act as if until you become. There's a profound difference. One is pretending. The other is practicing your way into a new reality. I want to share a powerful technique for identity-level reprogramming. It's called future self-visualization, and it's used by elite athletes, successful entrepreneurs, and anyone who's achieved significant personal transformation. Here's how it works. You create a detailed mental image of your future self, the version of you who has already completed the reprogramming process, who has already overcome the limitations, installed the desired programs, and integrated them into their identity. You don't just visualize what this person looks like. You feel into how they think, how they feel, how they move through the world. What thoughts run through their mind? What emotions do they experience regularly? How do they respond to challenges? What's their energy like? Then, and this is crucial, you practice being that person now. Not someday. Now. You ask yourself, how would my future self handle this situation? And you do that. You literally practice thinking and feeling and acting as that version of yourself. This might seem like fantasy or role-playing, but neurologically something fascinating happens. Your brain doesn't fully distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When you deeply imagine being your future self, you're actually creating the neural patterns associated with that identity. You're pre-programming yourself. Athletes use this all the time. They visualize perfect performance so vividly that their muscles actually fire in the patterns they'll need during competition. They're programming their neuromuscular system through visualization. The same principle applies to identity. Visualize your future identity vividly enough, consistently enough, and your brain begins to wire itself accordingly. Stage 6. Testing and refinement reprogramming isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. And like any process, it requires testing and refinement. You need to put your new programs under pressure and see how they hold up. This means intentionally exposing yourself to situations that would have previously triggered your old programs. Not recklessly. You don't throw yourself into overwhelming situations before you're ready. But strategically, progressively, you test your new programming. If you've been reprogramming defensiveness to receptivity, you need to put yourself in situations where you receive feedback. If you've been reprogramming anxiety to calmness, you need to face situations that would have previously made you anxious. This serves two purposes. First, it strengthens the new program through real-world application. Practice in controlled conditions is valuable, but nothing compares to real-world experience. Second, it reveals where your programming still needs work. Maybe you discover that your new program works beautifully in most situations, but breaks down under specific conditions. That's valuable information. That tells you where to focus your continued reprogramming efforts. Think of this like stress testing a building. You want to know where the weak points are while you can still reinforce them, not when the building collapses. Your new mental programs need to be stress tested, refined, and strengthened through progressively challenging real-world application. And here's something important. Failure is part of the process. You will sometimes revert to old programs. You will sometimes get triggered and respond automatically in the old ways. This doesn't mean the reprogramming isn't working. It means you're human, and change is rarely linear. The difference between someone who successfully reprograms and someone who gives up is how they interpret these setbacks. The person who gives up says, "See? I can't change. I'm still the same." The person who succeeds says, "I reverted to an old pattern. That's okay. That's data. Now I know I need more practice in that specific situation." No judgment, just information, just refinement, just continued practice. The long game. Maintaining new programs. Once a new program is well established, it requires less conscious effort to maintain. It starts to run automatically, just like the old program did. But here's what you need to understand. Neural pathways can weaken again if not used. The old program, even if dormant, still exists in your brain, and under certain conditions, extreme stress, fatigue, or similar triggers to when it was first formed, it can reactivate. This is why people sometimes relapse into old patterns even after years of successful change. The old program isn't gone, it's just dormant. And given the right conditions, it can wake up. This isn't a reason for despair. It's a reason for awareness. Maintaining new programs means continuing to practice them, even after they feel automatic. Not with the same intensity as when you were first installing them, but with enough consistency to keep them strong. Think of it like physical fitness. You don't work out intensely for 6 months, get in shape, and then stop forever. You maintain a practice. Maybe less intense than when you were building fitness, but consistent enough to maintain it. Mental programming works the same way. Once you've reprogrammed something, you maintain it through ongoing practice. Not obsessively, not neurotically, but consistently. Regular check-ins with yourself. Continued awareness of your patterns. Occasional refresher periods where you practice more intensively. This is how transformation becomes permanent. Not through a one-time fix, but through ongoing conscious evolution. You're not trying to reach a final destination where you're done. You're establishing a new relationship with your mind, one where you're actively engaged in shaping it rather than passively accepting whatever programs happen to be running. You are the programmer. Your mind is the program, and the code you write today determines the life you live tomorrow. This is the hidden law of the mind in action. This is conscious creation. This is taking full responsibility for your mental landscape. Not blaming past conditioning, but acknowledging it and choosing to transcend it. Not waiting for circumstances to change you, but deliberately changing yourself regardless of circumstances. This is freedom. Not from having programs, you'll always have programs, but freedom to choose which programs you run, to design them consciously, to update them continuously, to become quite literally whoever you decide to become. The power has always been yours. Now you have the methodology to use it. Chapter 5. Practical transformation from understanding to embodiment. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. You can understand every principle we've discussed. The architecture of mind, the formation of beliefs, the emotion thought loop, the reprogramming process, and remain completely unchanged. Because understanding is not transformation. Understanding is simply the beginning. Transformation happens in practice, in the daily, moment-by-moment application of principles to real life, in the messy, imperfect, sometimes frustrating process of actually doing the work. This chapter is about that work, the practical, tangible, specific practices that turn intellectual understanding into lived experience. This is where theory meets reality, where the abstract becomes concrete, where you stop being a student of these ideas and start being a practitioner of them. And I want to be clear from the start. This will require effort. It will require consistency. It will require you to show up for yourself even when you don't feel like it, even when progress seems slow, even when old patterns try to pull you back. But it will also be the most rewarding work you've ever done. Because you're not building something external. You're not trying to achieve something out there in the world. You're rebuilding yourself from the inside out. You're becoming the conscious architect of your own mind. And that is the foundation upon which everything else in your life is built. Let's begin with the most fundamental practice, the one that everything else depends on. This is the practice that ancient wisdom traditions have emphasized for thousands of years, and that modern neuroscience has validated as one of the most powerful tools for mental transformation. Practice 1. Thought observation. Before you can change your thoughts, you must see them. And most people have never truly observed their thoughts. They've lived their entire lives identified with their thinking, believing that they are their thoughts, completely merged with the mental stream flowing through their consciousness. Thought observation is the practice of creating separation between you and your thoughts, of recognizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear. This might sound philosophical, but it has immediate practical application, because once you can observe a thought without being consumed by it, you have power over it. Here's how to practice. Set aside 10 minutes. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and simply watch your thoughts. Don't try to control them. Don't try to stop them. Don't judge them as good or bad. Just observe them the way you might watch clouds passing through the sky. A thought appears. I have so much to do today. Notice it. Just notice it. You don't need to engage with it, expand on it, or follow the chain of thoughts it wants to trigger. Just see it, acknowledge it, and let it pass. Another thought appears. This is stupid, I'm not doing it right. Notice it. Just notice it. See how the mind generates commentary, judgment, evaluation, but you don't have to believe it or act on it. Just observe it passing through. This sounds simple. It's not easy. Your mind will resist. It will say you're wasting time. It will generate urgent thoughts demanding attention. It will get bored, restless, frustrated. That's all part of the practice. You're not trying to achieve a perfectly quiet mind. You're building the capacity to observe thoughts without being pulled into them. Do this daily, even 5 minutes, even 3 minutes if that's all you can manage. Because this capacity, the ability to observe thoughts rather than being identified with them, is the foundation of all mental transformation. You can't change patterns you can't see, and thought observation trains you to see. As you practice this, you'll start noticing patterns. You'll see that certain thoughts appear repeatedly. You'll notice the emotional charge attached to different thoughts. You'll recognize triggers, external situations that automatically generate specific thought patterns. All of this awareness is valuable data for your transformation work. Practice 2. The thought audit building on observation. The thought audit is a structured practice for identifying your most common thought patterns and evaluating whether they're serving you. This is best done in writing, because writing forces specificity and creates a record you can revisit. Take a notepad or open a document on your computer. Over the course of 1 week, whenever you notice a strong emotion, whether positive or negative, pause and write down the thought that preceded it. Not your interpretation of the thought, not a sanitized version, the actual thought exactly as it appeared in your mind. For example, felt anxious before meeting. Thought, they're going to think I'm incompetent. Felt excited about project. Thought, I have a really good idea here. Felt irritated by partner. Thought, they never listened to me. Felt proud after task. Thought, I handled that really well. Do this consistently for a week. You'll end up with dozens of entries. Now review them. Look for patterns. Which thoughts appear most frequently? Which thoughts generate the strongest emotions? Which thoughts are empowering you? Which are limiting you? This audit reveals your mental operating system. You'll likely discover that you have a small set of core thoughts that you think repeatedly in various forms throughout your day, and these recurring thoughts are shaping your emotional experience and driving your behaviors. Once you've identified these patterns, evaluate them honestly. For each recurring negative thought, ask, is this thought factually true or is it an interpretation? Does this thought help me or harm me? Would I think this thought about someone I love? If I continue thinking this thought, where will I be in 5 years? This evaluation isn't about judging yourself. It's about becoming conscious of the cost of your thinking patterns, because every thought has a cost. Some thoughts cost you energy, confidence, peace, and opportunity. Other thoughts generate energy, build confidence, create peace, and reveal opportunity. The audit helps you see clearly which thoughts are assets and which are liabilities. Practice 3. Thought replacement. Protocol. Once you've identified a limiting thought pattern through your audit, you need a systematic way to replace it. This is where the thought replacement protocol comes in. It's a step-by-step process for installing new thought patterns. Step 1. Identify the exact limiting thought you want to replace. Be specific. Not "I have negative thoughts," but "when I face a challenge, I automatically think I can't handle this." Step 2. Identify the feeling this thought generates. Usually it's some form of fear, anxiety, inadequacy, or helplessness. Name it specifically. Step 3. Examine the evidence. Is this thought always true? Can you find any examples where you've handled challenges successfully? You can. Because you're alive and functional, which means you've handled thousands of challenges. This step weakens the certainty of the limiting thought. Step 4. Create a replacement thought. This is crucial. The replacement must be believable to you right now. If your limiting thought is, "I can't handle this," the replacement shouldn't be, "I can handle anything effortlessly." Your mind will reject that as obviously false. Instead, try something like, "I can figure this out even if it takes time," or "I've handled difficult things before." These are believable and empowering. Step 5. Practice the replacement. This is where most people fail. They create a new thought but never actually practice it. You must practice the new thought repeatedly, especially in moments when the old thought would normally appear. When you face a challenge and feel "I can't handle this" rising, immediately interrupt it and replace it with your new thought. "I can figure this out, even if it takes time." Step 6. Reinforce with action. Thoughts become beliefs through emotional reinforcement. Take action aligned with your new thought, even small action. If you're thinking, "I can figure this out," actually start figuring it out. Take one small step, then acknowledge yourself for it. Feel the satisfaction. This emotional reinforcement strengthens the new neural pathway. Repeat this protocol for each major limiting thought you've identified. Don't try to change everything at once. Pick 1 or 2 thoughts to focus on. Master those. Then move to the next ones. Practice 4. The morning mental set. How you start your day determines the mental trajectory of your entire day. Most people begin their day reactively, checking their phone, scrolling news or social media, immediately responding to other people's priorities. This sets a reactive tone that persists throughout the day. The morning mental set is a practice of consciously choosing your mental state before engaging with the external world. It's best done within the first 30 minutes of waking, before you check your phone or start your daily activities. Here's a simple but powerful protocol. First 5 minutes. Thought observation. Before getting out of bed, spend 5 minutes simply observing your thoughts. Notice what's already running in your mind. Anxieties about the day? Resistance to getting up? Memories from yesterday? Just observe. This creates the separation between you and your thoughts that we discussed earlier. Next 5 minutes. Gratitude focus. Think of 3 specific things you're grateful for. Not abstract things, specific concrete things. Not "I'm grateful for my family," but "I'm grateful for the way my daughter laughed yesterday." Feel the gratitude. Let it generate warmth in your body. This isn't just positive thinking. You're literally changing your brain chemistry by generating gratitude-associated neurotransmitters. Next, 5 minutes. Intention setting. Ask yourself, who do I want to be today? Not what you want to do, who you want to be. Patient, focused, courageous, creative. Choose one quality and set the intention to embody it. Visualize yourself moving through your day with this quality. See yourself responding to situations in alignment with this intention. Final 5 minutes. Opportunity scanning. Think about your day ahead. Instead of focusing on problems or obligations, ask, what opportunities might today contain? This question primes your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters information, to notice opportunities rather than just threats or problems. 20 minutes. That's all. But done consistently, this morning practice transforms your baseline mental state. You move from reactive to intentional, from victim to creator, from unconscious to conscious. Practice 5. Emotional Reset Technique. Throughout your day, you'll find yourself in emotional states that don't serve you. Anxiety, frustration, overwhelm, irritation. These states narrow your thinking, reduce your options, and pull you into reactive behaviors. You need a quick, reliable method to reset your emotional state when this happens. The emotional reset technique combines several elements: physiological, cognitive, and intentional, to shift your state in just a few minutes. Step 1. Physiological interrupt. Your emotional state is partly maintained by your physiology, your posture, your breathing, your muscle tension. Change your physiology first. Stand up if you're sitting. If you're hunched, straighten. Take 3 deep breaths, in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 6. Shake out your arms and shoulders. This might seem simplistic, but you're literally changing the signals your body is sending to your brain. Step 2. Pattern interrupt. Your emotional state is also maintained by repetitive thoughts. You need to interrupt this pattern. One effective method: count backward from 100 by 7s. 100, 93, 86, 79. This requires enough attention that it interrupts the emotional thought loop. Or name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. This grounds you in present sensory experience rather than past or future thinking. Step 3. Perspective shift. Ask yourself a reframing question. What else could this mean? Or how might I see this differently? Or what would someone I respect think about this situation? These questions activate different parts of your brain and generate alternative interpretations. You don't need to force a positive interpretation. You just need to break the fixation on one negative interpretation. Step 4. Intentional refocus. Once you've disrupted the negative state, consciously choose where to direct your attention, not as denial of the situation, but as strategic focus. Ask, what's the most useful thing I can focus on right now? Maybe it's solving the problem. Maybe it's accepting what you can't control. Maybe it's doing something completely different until you're in a better state to address the situation. This entire process takes 3 to 5 minutes. Practice it when you notice yourself in an unproductive emotional state. Don't wait until you're completely overwhelmed. The earlier you intervene, the easier the reset. Practice 6. Evening reflection and integration. Just as the morning set prepares your mind for the day, evening reflection integrates your experiences and prepares your mind for quality rest. This practice is often overlooked, but it's crucial for ongoing transformation. Spend 10 to 15 minutes before bed in structured reflection. Not rumination, that's different. Rumination is repetitive, unconstructive thinking about problems. Reflection is conscious evaluation and integration. Ask yourself these specific questions. What did I do well today? Name 3 specific things. They don't have to be major accomplishments. Maybe you stayed patient in a frustrating situation. Maybe you chose a healthy meal. Maybe you practiced your new thought pattern successfully once. Acknowledge yourself. This isn't ego inflation. This is recognition, which reinforces positive patterns. Where did I revert to old patterns? Be honest but not harsh. Where did you fall back into limiting thoughts or reactive behaviors? Don't judge it. Just notice it. This awareness prevents you from blindly repeating the pattern tomorrow. What did I learn today? What new insight emerged? What worked? What didn't? How can I apply this learning tomorrow? This question transforms every experience, even difficult ones, into data for growth. What am I releasing from today? What thoughts, emotions, or concerns from today do you need to let go of before sleep? Consciously acknowledge them and choose to release them. Holding on to the day's stress prevents quality rest and sets you up poorly for tomorrow. What am I setting as my intention for tomorrow? Based on today's reflection, what quality or behavior do you want to emphasize tomorrow? This primes your mind for the next day. Write these reflections if possible. Writing creates clarity and also serves as a record of your transformation journey. You'll be able to look back and see patterns in your growth that aren't visible from day to day. Practice 7. The perspective practice. One of the most powerful ways to change your thoughts is to consciously adopt different perspectives. Most people are stuck in one perspective, their own immediate, emotional, reactive perspective. But any situation can be viewed from multiple perspectives, and each perspective generates different thoughts and emotions. Practice this systematically. When facing a challenging situation, force yourself to see it from at least 3 perspectives. Perspective 1. The immediate reactive perspective. This is your first emotional response. Don't suppress it, but recognize it for what it is. One perspective, not the only truth. Perspective 2. The observer perspective. Imagine you're watching this situation from outside, like a documentary filmmaker. What would an objective observer see? This creates emotional distance and often reveals aspects you miss when you're emotionally merged with the situation. Perspective 3. The future perspective. Imagine yourself 5 years from now looking back at this situation. How important will it seem? What will you wish you had done? How will you have grown from handling it? This perspective often reveals that current concerns are less catastrophic than they feel in the moment. Perspective 4. The wisdom perspective. If someone you deeply respect and trust were in this situation, how would they see it? What would they think and do? This accesses a wiser part of yourself that's often drowned out by immediate reactions. You don't need to use all 4 perspectives every time, but practicing perspective shifting trains your mind to recognize that your first thought about a situation isn't necessarily the most accurate or useful thought. This creates flexibility, which is essential for transformation. Practice 8. Micro moments of awareness. Transformation doesn't just happen during formal practices. It happens in the hundreds of micro moments throughout your day where you could either run on autopilot or make a conscious choice. The micro moment practice is simple. Throughout your day, create tiny pauses of awareness. Before checking your phone, pause for 3 seconds. Before responding to someone, pause for 3 seconds. Before starting a new task, pause for 3 seconds. 3 seconds. That's all. In those 3 seconds, you're not trying to do anything. You're just creating a gap of awareness. And in that gap, unconscious patterns lose their grip. Conscious choice becomes possible. This might seem trivial. It's not. Most of your life is lived on autopilot. Habitual thoughts, habitual reactions, habitual behaviors. These micro moments of awareness break the autopilot. They bring you back to presence, to consciousness, to choice. Set reminders on your phone throughout the day. Pause, breathe, choose. Just that. Over time, these moments accumulate. You become progressively more present, more aware, more intentional, and transformation happens not in dramatic moments but in these accumulated micro moments of consciousness. Practice 9. The Pattern Journal. This is a weekly practice that builds on your daily thought observation and reflection. Once a week, review your week. Look for patterns in your thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and circumstances. What patterns do you notice? Maybe you're consistently anxious on Sunday evenings. Maybe you're consistently energized after creative work. Maybe you consistently feel resentful after interactions with a specific person. Maybe you consistently feel proud when you complete tasks early. Don't just notice these patterns, investigate them. What thoughts are associated with each pattern? What beliefs might be driving them? What triggers them? What reinforces them? Then ask, which patterns do I want to strengthen? Which do I want to weaken? What specific practices will support this? This meta-level awareness, seeing patterns across time rather than just in individual moments, is incredibly valuable. Because transformation isn't about perfecting individual moments. It's about shifting overall patterns, and you can only shift patterns you can see. Practice 10. The Embodiment Exercise. This is perhaps the most advanced practice, but also one of the most transformative. It's based on the principle that your body and mind are not separate. They're a unified system. Your thoughts influence your body, and your body influences your thoughts. The embodiment exercise works like this. Choose the quality you're trying to develop. Confidence, peace, courage, whatever it is. Now, instead of just thinking about that quality, embody it physically. If you're developing confidence, stand the way a confident person stands. Breathe the way a confident person breathes. Move the way a confident person moves. Speak with the tone and pace a confident person uses, not as an act, but as a practice. You're training your body to hold the physical pattern of confidence. Do this for 10 minutes a day. Just embody the quality. Walk around your home or office in this embodied state. Notice how it feels. Notice what thoughts arise when you hold this physical pattern. Notice how your emotional state shifts. Here's what's neurologically fascinating. Your brain receives constant feedback from your body about what state you're in. If your body is in a collapsed, tense, closed posture, your brain interprets this as, we're in a threatened state. If your body is in an open, relaxed, upright posture, your brain interprets this as when we're in a safe, confident state. By deliberately practicing the physical patterns of the qualities you want to develop, you're sending new signals to your brain, and your brain responds by generating thoughts and emotions consistent with those signals. You're literally reprogramming from the outside in. Practice 11. The accountability structure. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Knowing what to do and actually doing it consistently are very different things. You can understand every practice in this chapter and still not do them, because humans are remarkably good at self-deception and rationalization. This is where accountability structures come in. These are external systems that support your internal commitment. They can take many forms. A practice partner, someone also working on transformation who you check in with regularly. You share your commitments, report on your practice, and support each other. The simple act of telling someone else what you're committed to dramatically increases your follow-through. A tracking system. A simple chart where you check off each practice you complete each day. The visual record creates both motivation and information. You can see your consistency over time. You can see which practices you're avoiding. This awareness alone often drives behavior change. A consequence structure. This is controversial but effective. You commit that if you don't complete your practice for 3 days in a row, you have to do something you'd rather not. Maybe donate money to a cause you oppose. Maybe do some task you've been avoiding. The consequence creates useful friction against your resistance. Whatever structure you choose, make it external and make it specific. I'll try to practice more is not accountability. I will do 10 minutes of thought observation every morning before 9 a.m. And I will text my practice partner confirmation each day is accountability. Practice 12. The integration question. Throughout all of these practices, there's one question you should ask yourself regularly. Am I practicing or am I just understanding? Because here's what happens. You read these practices. You understand them. They make sense. And then you go about your life without actually implementing them. You've added information to your mind but created no transformation in your life. The integration question keeps you honest. It forces you to evaluate whether you're actually doing the work or just thinking about doing the work. And when you notice you're only understanding without practicing, that awareness itself often catalyzes action. Ask yourself this question at the end of each day. What did I actually practice today? Not what did I think about practicing, not what I intended to practice, but what did I actually do? If the answer is nothing, that's data. Not judgment, data. And tomorrow you can choose differently. The long view, transformation as a lifestyle. Here's the final truth I want you to understand. Transformation is not a destination. It's not something you achieve and then you're done. It's a way of life. It's a commitment to ongoing conscious evolution. You don't do these practices for a month and then stop because you're fixed. You integrate them into your life because you're committed to being conscious rather than unconscious, intentional rather than reactive, evolving rather than stagnating. Some days you'll practice intensely. Some days you'll barely practice at all. That's okay. That's human. What matters is the long-term trajectory. What matters is that more days than not, you're showing up for yourself. You're applying these principles. You're practicing transformation. And over time, weeks, months, years, you'll look back and barely recognize the person you were. Not because you forced yourself to change, but because you practiced your way into a new way of being. Thought by thought, choice by choice, moment by moment. This is the hidden law of the mind in action. This is conscious creation. This is becoming the person you were always capable of being but perhaps never knew how to become. The practices are here. The principles are clear. The only question remaining is, will you practice? Not someday. Not when you're ready. Not when circumstances are perfect. Now. Today. This moment. Because transformation doesn't happen in perfect conditions. It happens in the middle of ordinary life, practiced by ordinary people who make the extraordinary choice to become conscious architects of their own minds. You are that person. You always have been. Now you have the practices to prove it. Conclusion. The choice that changes everything. Your mind, your creation, your life. We've reached the end of this journey together. But in truth, this is not an ending. It's a beginning. Because everything you've learned here is not meant to be known, it's meant to be lived. Not understood, but embodied. Not believed, but practiced. Let's take a moment to look back at where we've traveled. Because the path we've walked together contains a map, and that map can guide you forward for the rest of your life. We began with a simple but revolutionary truth. Every action begins as a thought. Every belief starts as a whisper in your mind, and most people never question where their thoughts come from or how much power they truly hold. They live their entire lives at the mercy of mental patterns they didn't consciously choose, running programs they never knew were installed. But you're different now, because you've seen behind the curtain. You've understood the hidden law of the mind. What you focus on expands. What you dwell upon becomes your world. Your thoughts are not passive observers of reality. They are active creators of it. In Chapter 1, we explored the architecture of mind. You learned that your thoughts are not harmless. They are the architects of your emotions, your habits, your destiny. A single repeated idea can become a belief. A belief can turn into behavior. And behavior defines who you become. We discovered that your mind is like a building under constant construction, and you, whether you realize it or not, are the architect. Every thought is a brick. Every belief is a foundation. Every mental habit is a wall. And the question is not whether you're building, but whether you're building consciously. You learned about the foundation, the walls, and the roof of your mental structure, how core beliefs determine everything built upon them, how daily mental habits create your experience of life, how your beliefs about what's possible create the ceiling of your potential. And most importantly, you learned that you can renovate. You can demolish old structures that no longer serve you and build new ones that do. In Chapter 2, we went deeper into the birth of belief systems. You discovered that your beliefs are not truths. They are simply thoughts you've been thinking for a very long time. We traced beliefs back to their origins in childhood, when your mind absorbed ideas from your environment like a sponge absorbs water. You saw how a single moment, interpreted in a particular way, paired with emotion, can become a belief that shapes decades of your life. We explored the 4 stages of belief formation: the initial thought, repetition and reinforcement, emotional anchoring, and identity integration. You learned how confirmation bias makes your mind seek evidence for what you already believe, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you discovered that beliefs about your identity are the most powerful programs you have. They determine what you think you can do, what you think you deserve, and what behaviors feel natural. But here's what made that chapter liberating. You learned that you are not your beliefs. You are the one who has been believing them, and you can choose to believe something different. Identity is not fixed. It's simply a collection of beliefs that can be updated, revised, and transformed. In Chapter 3, we unveiled the emotion-thought loop. You discovered that emotions don't come from events, they come from your thoughts about events. 2 people can experience the same situation and have completely different emotional responses because they're thinking different thoughts. Your thoughts create your emotions, and your emotions influence your next thoughts, creating a loop that either spirals upward or downward. We explored how emotional states color your perception, making anxious thoughts seem accurate when you're anxious, making depressing thoughts seem true when you're depressed. You learned about state-dependent thinking, how your brain literally has different thinking patterns depending on your emotional state. And most importantly, you learned that you can interrupt negative loops by changing your thought patterns, and you can create positive loops intentionally by consciously choosing empowering thoughts. You discovered the anxiety loop, the depression loop, the anger loop, and the shame loop, recognizing that most people have a default pattern they fall into. But you also learned about gratitude loops, curiosity loops, and confidence loops, positive spirals that you can initiate through conscious thought selection. In Chapter 4, we entered the realm of practical reprogramming. You learned that your brain is not fixed, it's plastic, shapeable, programmable throughout your entire life. Neuroplasticity means that every thought you think, every action you take, every experience you have is literally reshaping your neural architecture. The question is not whether your brain can change, but whether you're changing it consciously or unconsciously. We broke down the reprogramming process into 6 clear stages: awareness and identification, interruption and disruption, replacement and reconditioning, environmental design, identity integration, and testing and refinement. You learned that reprogramming isn't about suppressing old patterns, it's about replacing them with new ones through consistent practice and emotional reinforcement. You discovered the power of future self-visualization, how acting as your future self now creates the neural patterns associated with that identity. You learned that transformation isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing process requiring maintenance and continued practice. And you understood that old programs never completely disappear, they just become dormant, which means vigilance and consistent practice are necessary for lasting change. In Chapter 5, we moved from understanding to embodiment. Because knowledge without application is just entertainment, you received 12 specific actionable practices: thought observation, the thought audit, thought replacement protocol, morning mental set emotional reset technique, evening reflection, perspective practice, micro moments of awareness, the pattern journal, the embodiment exercise, accountability structures, and the integration question. Each practice was designed to turn intellectual understanding into lived experience, not as a temporary program you complete and move on from, but as tools you integrate into your life permanently. Because transformation is not a destination, it's a way of life. It's a commitment to ongoing conscious evolution. And now here we are, at this moment, you and I together in this space where a journey ends and a new one begins. So let me ask you directly, what will you do with what you've learned? Because you have a choice. You've always had a choice, but now your choice is conscious. Now you know what you're choosing. You can close this audiobook not in agreement, think that was interesting, and return to life exactly as it was before. Your old patterns will welcome you back. Your familiar thoughts will continue running their loops. Your unconscious programs will keep executing automatically. Nothing will have changed except that you now know it's possible to change, which might actually make staying the same more painful. Or you can choose differently. You can decide, right now, in this moment, that you are done living unconsciously, done being reactive, done letting old programs run your life, done being a victim of thought patterns you didn't choose, done settling for a mental architecture built by others. You can decide that today is the day you become the conscious architect of your own mind. That today is the day you take full responsibility, not for the programming you received, but for the reprogramming you're capable of. That today is the day you stop waiting for circumstances to change you and start deliberately changing yourself, regardless of circumstances. This is not motivational rhetoric. This is a genuine choice point, and the choice you make in the next few moments will determine the trajectory of your life more than any external circumstance ever could. Let me paint two pictures for you. Two possible futures, both available to you, both determined entirely by what you choose to do with what you now know. Future 1. The path of unconsciousness. In this future, you finish this audiobook with good intentions. You tell yourself you'll start practicing tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and life happens. Work demands your attention. Relationships need your time. Problems require your energy. The practices feel like one more thing to do in an already overwhelming life. Days pass. You think occasionally about the principles you learned. I should really work on my thought patterns, you tell yourself. But you don't. Weeks pass. The insights fade. The practices never become habits. Months pass. You can barely remember what the audiobook was about. Something about thoughts and beliefs, you think. Years pass. You're still running the same programs, still caught in the same loops, still building with the same limiting beliefs. Oh, you're a little more aware now. When you catch yourself in a negative spiral, you recognize it. There I go again, thinking those thoughts. But recognition without action is just intellectual awareness. It changes nothing. You're frustrated because you know better. You know your thoughts create your reality. You know you could reprogram your mind. You know transformation is possible. But knowing and doing are worlds apart. And in this future, you stayed in the world of knowing. You collected information but never transformed it into experience. And here's what's tragic about this future. It's not that your life becomes terrible. It's that it stays exactly the same. The same limitations, the same fears, the same patterns. Year after year after year, you had the map to freedom, but you never took the journey. Future 2, the path of consciousness. In this future, you finish this audiobook and immediately take action. Not tomorrow, today, right now. You don't wait until you feel ready. You don't wait for the perfect time. You don't wait for circumstances to align. You begin. You start with thought observation. Just 10 minutes a day watching your thoughts without judgment. It's difficult at first. Your mind resists, but you persist. After a week, you start seeing patterns you never noticed before. After a month, you can observe thoughts without being consumed by them. This alone transforms your relationship with your mind. You conduct a thought audit. You discover that you've been thinking the same limiting thoughts hundreds of times per week. Thoughts you never questioned, never evaluated, never chose, but they've been running your life. Now that you see them clearly, you can address them. You implement the thought replacement protocol. You choose one major limiting thought and systematically replace it. The first few weeks are challenging. The old thought feels more natural, but you practice the new one anyway. Day after day, week after week, and slowly, gradually, the new thought starts to feel natural. The old thought starts to feel strange. After 3 months, you barely recognize yourself. Not because everything in your external life has changed, though some things have, but because your internal experience is completely different. Challenges that would have overwhelmed you before now feel manageable. Opportunities you would have missed before now feel obvious. Relationships that were difficult before now feel easier. Not because they changed, because you changed. You implement the morning mental set. Every day starts with intention rather than reaction. You practice the emotional reset technique whenever you notice yourself in an unproductive state. You do evening reflections, integrating each day's experiences into wisdom. You create micro moments of awareness throughout your day, bringing consciousness to what was previously automatic. After 6 months, people close to you start asking, "What's different about you?" They can't quite name it, but they sense something has shifted. You're calmer, more confident, more present, more authentic, less reactive, less anxious, less trapped. After a year, you look back at who you were and feel profound gratitude. Not because that person was bad, but because you had the courage to evolve beyond them. You see clearly now how your old thought patterns were creating your old reality, and you see clearly how your new thought patterns are creating a new reality. But here's what's most beautiful about this future. You're not done. You're not fixed, you're simply awake. You've become the conscious architect of your mind, and you know you'll be practicing and evolving for the rest of your life. But instead of feeling burdensome, this feels liberating, because you're no longer at the mercy of unconscious patterns. You're no longer a victim of circumstance. You're a creator, consciously participating in your own becoming. And the practices that felt difficult at first now feel natural. They're no longer something you have to do. They're simply how you live. Thought observation isn't a formal practice you do for 10 minutes. It's a constant, gentle awareness running in the background of your life. Conscious thought selection isn't effort, it's automatic. You've reprogrammed yourself so thoroughly that consciousness has become your new default. This future isn't hypothetical. It's not wishful thinking. It's available to you. Completely available. The only barrier between you and this future is practice. Consistent, imperfect, sometimes frustrating, always worthwhile practice. Now here's the crucial understanding. These two futures diverge based on a choice you make not once, but many times. The choice between consciousness and unconsciousness, between practice and procrastination, between action and intention, between showing up for yourself or abandoning yourself to old patterns. And that choice is always available, right now, this moment, every moment. You don't choose your future once and then it's set. You choose it moment by moment, thought by thought, practice by practice. You choose it when your alarm goes off and you either hit snooze or get up for morning practice. You choose it when you feel anxious and either spiral with it or interrupt it. You choose it when you're criticized and either react defensively or respond consciously. You choose it when you face a challenge and either think, "I can't," or "I can figure this out." Hundreds of small choices, thousands of them, and they accumulate, they compound. They create momentum in one direction or the other, toward consciousness or unconsciousness, toward freedom or bondage, toward the person you're capable of becoming or the person you've always been. Let me share something important. You will not choose consciousness every time. You will fail. You will revert to old patterns. You will have days where you don't practice, days where you're completely unconscious, days where every old program runs full strength and you feel like you've learned nothing. This is not failure. This is being human. The difference between someone who transforms and someone who doesn't isn't perfection. It's persistence. The transformer fails and continues. The non-transformer fails and quits. So when you fail, and you will, don't use it as evidence that you can't change. Use it as data. Learn from it, adjust, and continue, because the path to consciousness isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. You might revisit old patterns, but each time you do, you're at a different level. You see them differently. You recover faster. You learn more deeply. This is the long game. And the long game is the only game that matters, because quick fixes don't exist. Instant transformation is a fantasy. Real transformation, deep, lasting. Fundamental transformation happens slowly through consistent practice, over time. But here's what makes it worth it. Every small practice, every conscious choice, every moment of awareness is valuable, not just because of where it leads eventually, but because of what it is right now. Each moment of consciousness is its own reward. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, you taste freedom. Each time you interrupt an old pattern, you experience power. Each time you embody your future self, you glimpse your potential. The journey itself is the destination. The practice itself is the transformation. You're not practicing to someday be conscious, you're being conscious through practice. You're not working toward future freedom, you're experiencing present freedom in the work. So what now? What's your very next step? I'll tell you exactly what it is. Close this audiobook. Don't scroll to the next video or check your notifications. Sit quietly for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, simply observe your thoughts. Don't judge them. Don't try to change them. Just watch them, that's it. That's your first practice, 5 minutes of thought observation, right now. And tomorrow morning, before you do anything else, spend 20 minutes on the morning mental set. 5 minutes observing, 5 minutes in gratitude, 5 minutes setting intention, 5 minutes scanning for opportunities. 20 minutes. That's all. Do this for 7 days. Just 7 days. Don't commit to a year. Don't overwhelm yourself with all 12 practices at once. Just these 2 practices for 7 days. After 7 days, evaluate. Has anything shifted? Do you feel any different? Are you seeing anything more clearly? If yes, continue. Add 1 more practice. Maybe the thought audit. Maybe the evening reflection. Build gradually. Create momentum. If after 7 days you feel nothing has shifted, investigate why. Were you actually practicing or just intending to practice? Were you fully present during practice or just going through the motions? Were you expecting dramatic results instead of noticing subtle shifts? Adjust accordingly and continue. The point is to start. Not perfectly. Not with everything. Just start, because there's a vast difference between someone who knows these principles and someone who practices them. And that difference is everything. Here's what I know about you, even though we've never met. You wouldn't have listened to this audiobook if you weren't ready for change. Something in you knows you're capable of more. Something in you recognizes that you've been living smaller than you need to. Something in you is hungry for transformation. That something is your consciousness calling you toward itself. It's your potential beckoning you forward. It's your future self reaching back through time, inviting you to become who you're meant to be. Will you answer that call? Will you honor that hunger? Will you step toward that potential? The choice is yours. It's always been yours. But now you're equipped. Now you understand. Now you have the principles, the practices, and the path. Everything you need is already within you. The capacity for transformation isn't something you need to acquire. It's something you need to activate. Your mind is already programmable. Your brain is already plastic. Your thoughts already have the power to reshape your reality. You're not trying to gain something you don't have. You're trying to use what you've always had but never fully activated. And here's the deepest truth. The person you're becoming is not someone new. It's who you've always been beneath the conditioning, beneath the limiting beliefs, beneath the unconscious programs. Transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about removing everything that isn't truly you and revealing what was always there. You are not broken. You never were. You were simply running software that wasn't designed with your highest good in mind. And now you know how to rewrite that software. You know how to install programs that serve you. You know how to become the conscious creator of your own mind. This is not the end. This is the beginning. Everything until now has been preparation. The real work starts when you close this audiobook and step into your life with new awareness, new tools, and new commitment. Your thoughts are waiting. Your mind is ready. Your future is calling. What will you choose? Choose consciousness. Choose practice. Choose transformation. Not someday. Not when you're ready. Not when circumstances are perfect. Choose now, because now is all you have, and now is enough. You are the hidden law of the mind in action. You are the proof that thoughts become things. You are the living demonstration that consciousness can evolve itself consciously. You always have been. You always will be. The only question is, will you live that truth consciously, or will you let it remain hidden? I believe you'll choose consciousness. I believe you'll do the work.
I believe you'll transform.
Not because you're special, but because you're ready. And ready is all you need to be, so go now. Step into your life as the conscious architect you were always meant to be. Build the mental structures that serve you. Install the programs that empower you. Create the thoughts that transform you. Your mind is waiting. Your life is waiting. Your future is waiting. The journey begins now. Welcome to conscious creation. Welcome to your power. Welcome to the rest of your life. Everything you've learned here is yours to keep, yours to use, yours to embody. The hidden law of the mind is no longer hidden. You see it. You understand it. You can use it, so use it. Practice it, live it, become it. This is not goodbye. This is hello. Hello to the person you're becoming. Hello to the life you're creating. Hello to the consciousness you're awakening. The work is yours now. The choice is yours. The power has always been yours. What you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. So think consciously. Feel intentionally. Imagine boldly. Your transformation starts now. The deeper truth. Why this matters beyond you. Before we part ways, I want to share something that goes beyond personal transformation. Something that elevates this work from self-improvement to something far more significant. When you transform your mind, you don't just change yourself. You change everyone you touch. Every interaction you have, every conversation you engage in, every relationship you participate in, all of it is influenced by your level of consciousness. When you operate from unconscious patterns, you spread unconsciousness. When you operate from awareness, you spread awareness. Think about it. When you're anxious, you make others anxious. When you're reactive, you trigger reactivity. When you're judgmental, you inspire defensiveness. Your internal state ripples outward, affecting everyone in your sphere of influence. This is not metaphorical, it's neurological. Mirror neurons in other people's brains literally reflect what they observe in you. But the opposite is equally true. When you're calm, you help others find calm. When you're conscious, you invite consciousness. When you're compassionate, you evoke compassion. Your transformation creates space for others to transform, not through preaching or teaching, but simply through being. This is especially true if you're a parent. Your children are not listening to your words as much as they're absorbing your state of being. They're learning thought patterns from watching you think. They're learning emotional regulation from watching you regulate. They're learning whether the world is safe or threatening, abundant or scarce, friendly or hostile, all from your internal reality. When you do this work, you're not just freeing yourself from limiting patterns. You're freeing your children from inheriting those patterns. You're breaking generational cycles of unconsciousness. You're giving them a different starting point than you had. And if you lead others, whether in business, community, or family, your level of consciousness directly impacts everyone you lead. Unconscious leaders create unconscious organizations. Conscious leaders create conscious cultures. Your internal work is not selfish. It's one of the most generous things you can do for those who depend on you. So yes, do this work for yourself. Do it because you deserve peace, clarity, and freedom. But also recognize that your transformation is not isolated. It's a gift to everyone whose life intersects with yours. It's a contribution to the collective consciousness of humanity. Every person who wakes up, who becomes conscious, who takes responsibility for their mental patterns, that person raises the baseline for everyone. You might think you're just one person working on your own thoughts, but you're part of a larger awakening. You're part of a movement toward consciousness that humanity desperately needs. The practice of self-compassion, the missing piece. There's one more critical element I need to address before we close. Throughout this journey, you'll encounter your own resistance, your own failures, your own moments of falling back into old patterns. And in those moments, how you treat yourself will determine whether you continue or quit. Most people approach transformation with an inner critic driving them forward. They're harsh with themselves, impatient, judgmental. I should be better by now. Why am I still thinking these thoughts? What's wrong with me? This internal harshness might create short-term motivation, but it inevitably leads to burnout and abandonment of the practice. True transformation requires self-compassion, not self-indulgence, compassion, the ability to see yourself clearly. including your limitations and failures without adding layers of judgment and shame. The ability to say, I'm struggling right now. This is difficult, and that's okay. I'm still showing up. I'm still practicing. I'm still moving forward. Self-compassion is not weakness. It's strength. It's the foundation of sustainable transformation. Because the critic's voice eventually becomes exhausting, but compassion is renewable. Compassion creates safety, and safety allows growth. When you notice yourself reverting to an old pattern, instead of thinking, I'm such a failure, try thinking, I'm learning. This is part of the process. I'm doing better than I was, and I'll continue improving. Same situation, completely different relationship with yourself, and that different relationship changes everything. Research in psychology consistently shows that self-compassion leads to greater resilience, higher motivation, and better outcomes than self-criticism. The harsh inner voice might push you temporarily, but the compassionate inner voice sustains you permanently. So as you practice these principles, practice them with kindness toward yourself. You're not trying to achieve perfection. You're trying to achieve progress. And progress is messy, non-linear, and requires patience. The invitation: join the conscious few. We live in a world that promotes unconsciousness. Endless distractions designed to keep you from thinking. Constant stimulation designed to keep you from feeling. Cultural conditioning designed to keep you from questioning. The default path is unconsciousness. Awareness requires intention. This means that choosing consciousness makes you part of a minority. Most people will continue running unconscious programs. Most people will remain reactive, victim-minded, and stuck in limiting patterns. Not because they're bad people, but because they never encountered these principles, or they encountered them but never practiced them. You're different. By listening to this audiobook completely, by considering these ideas seriously, by contemplating applying these practices, you've already separated yourself from the unconscious majority. You're becoming part of the conscious few, and the conscious few carry a unique responsibility, not to judge the unconscious masses, but to be a living example of what's possible, to demonstrate through your life that transformation is real, that consciousness is achievable, that patterns can be changed. You don't need to preach these principles. You don't need to convince anyone. You simply need to embody them. Live them so fully that others become curious. What's different about you? When they ask that question, then you can share. But the living always precedes the teaching. This is your invitation. Join the conscious few. Be someone who takes responsibility for their internal reality. Be someone who practices awareness. Be someone who evolves consciously. Not perfectly, but persistently. Not always, but increasingly. Not immediately, but eventually. The world needs more people like this. People who don't blame circumstances. People who don't remain victims of their conditioning. People who understand that the only thing they truly control is their own mind, and who take that control seriously. You can be one of those people. Starting today, starting with your very next thought. The final word. This is just the beginning. We've covered profound territory together. The architecture of mind, the birth of beliefs, the emotion-thought loop, the reprogramming process, the practical applications, the path forward. You have everything you need. But here's what I want you to remember above all else. This audiobook is not the transformation. This audiobook is the map. The transformation happens when you walk the territory the map describes. When you take these principles from concept to practice. When you move from understanding to embodiment. Some of you will do this. You'll close this audiobook and immediately begin practicing. You'll stumble, adjust, and continue. 6 months from now, you'll be unrecognizable to your former self. A year from now, you'll look back with wonder at how much has changed. This audiobook will have been the catalyst for your awakening. Others will collect this information and do nothing with it. You'll feel inspired for a few days, then drift back to normal. This audiobook will become another piece of consumed content, filed away mentally, occasionally remembered but never applied. The principles will remain theoretical. The transformation will remain potential. The difference between these two groups isn't intelligence, resources, or circumstances. It's choice. The choice to practice or not practice, to apply or not apply, to transform or remain the same. I can't make that choice for you. No one can. This is your life, your mind, your responsibility, your power. What I can do is remind you one final time. You are far more powerful than you've been led to believe. Your thoughts are far more influential than you've been taught. Your capacity for change is far greater than you've been told. The hidden law of the mind is no longer hidden from you. You've seen it. You understand it. You know how to use it. The only question remaining is, will you? I hope you will. I believe you will, because something brought you here. Something made you listen all the way to these final words. That something is your readiness, your hunger, your potential calling you forward. Honor that call. Begin the practice. Trust the process, and watch your life transform. Thought by thought, choice by choice, moment by moment. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Thank you for your attention, your openness, and your willingness to consider these ideas. The work ahead is yours alone, but you're not alone in doing it. Countless others are walking the same path, choosing consciousness, practicing transformation. You're part of something larger now, part of a movement toward awareness, part of humanity's evolution toward higher consciousness. Your individual practice contributes to collective awakening. Never doubt that your work matters. It does, more than you know. Go now with clarity, with purpose, with the knowledge that you hold the power to create your reality through the quality of your thoughts. The hidden law of the mind is yours to command. Use it wisely, use it consciously, use it daily. Your mind is the greatest tool you'll ever possess. Master it and you master your life. The journey begins now. Welcome home to yourself.